Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like we got a good group. My name is Caleb. I'm with AWG. I'm the guy who's been emailing you repeatedly and bugging you about this webinar. We're going to talk about some fun stuff today. We've got Christine Walsh from Brick, and she has a bunch of different topics for us. For those of you who are in attendance at the Missouri Grocers Association, you may have already met Christine or had the opportunity to speak with her. She's been working in the food industry for over 30 years and has conducted and created hundreds of webinars like this one. She has experience at various levels of the industry, including supply chain and marketing positions. And in her spare time, she likes to bug me with new marketing trends that I don't already know about. So I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody, and I ask you all to save your questions until the end or go ahead and send me a message on the chat. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Christine.
Thank you, Caleb. Hello, everybody. Again, this is Christine Walsh, and I am hopeful that you can see my screen. I will be, like any other webinar, I'll be moving through it. Ask that you keep your questions, as Caleb said, to the end. And just a little note that I have a cold and allergies, so if I sound sniffly and nasally and sneeze every now and again, that's what happens up here in Minnesota this time of year. But just to get going, so today it's going to be an overview of display ads and display advertising. When you deal with any online or digital platform, it could be much more detailed and much more technical. That's not this webinar. This is to give you an overview of display advertising, excuse me, how it works with the industry and how consumers engage with it, and why it's so important to have it as part of your own advertising arsenal now. We're also going to look at metrics and how display advertising is typically priced out and the fees that you would pay. And then I'm going to show you a retailer case study that shows the success that this level of advertising can do for you as retailers in your typical world and connecting with your customers. So what is display advertising? I'm suspecting all of you guys are online. You're on your computer now. You're connecting to this webinar. There used to be a time that we can only do webinars or classes like this when we were in front of each other in a classroom style. But if you're on the computer, you're aware of display advertising. It is basically any advertising that is on websites and social media sites. Like everything else with the internet and digital anything, it's becoming more sophisticated. And digital display advertising comes in many different formats. It can be as static as you want, meaning just an ad out there, or it can be as dynamic as you want, driving a consumer to a contest and you capture their information and send them an email back. It can be as static or as dynamic as you want. It can be seen in images, text, audios, videos, and any combination thereof. Again, you probably have seen it yourself. What I recommend you do when you are online on some website, click it, see how it works. Even if you're not interested in the topic, I think the more you click an ad that's on one of your favorite websites, you'll just learn more about it from a consumer experience. The goal of display advertising is a lot like, the rest of advertising. It does help deliver your brand message to a larger audience than you ever thought possible. From a dollar-to-dollar perspective, you can reach a much broader audience, a much more target audience than anything like a circular. And it can be delivered more in a repeated fashion over and over again. And as you know, that's what's so important in advertising and marketing. So not only does it deliver your brand message, but it also delivers really any targeted advertising you want. I mentioned a contest. It could be a coupon. It could be try our new product line, view our new product line. Whatever it is you need to do, you can send it through display advertising. Again, I recommend when you start seeing it yourself and are more aware of it on sites, click on it and see what happens and see what engages you more as a client or a customer. So why is this important? Well, we know that consumers are online. I'm first kind of rooting us in some details to make sure that we are all on the same page on why this is important. You guys already know that consumers are online. You're online, your customers are online. Most of your customers are probably walking around your stores with a smartphone in their hands. They're checking prices, they're checking nutritional information, they're checking for deals. That's already happening. Pew Research recently identified 79% total of Americans are online, slightly higher for women. But you know that, and you know they're on a number of different devices, from handheld to at-home computers. And why is this important? Because they're online, we're also measuring more the time they spend viewing. Obviously, if consumers are viewing more online, they're taking away from time that they're spending elsewhere. So the only viewership that has grown is digital or online or internet type of viewing. We know that. Again, we see it every day. You see it with your family. You see it with yourself. Right now, digital viewership is 14 times that of print. So we know that consumers are spending an average of 5 hours a day online, between work, between home, between any activities that they may have. Again, doesn't surprise you. So what does that mean for the marketers, people like you, people like CPG firms, people like, big and small companies that you do business with? Most marketers are seeing a significant shift in their ad spend to online. Again, it shouldn't surprise you, where they're taking, their finite number of dollars that they have available, and they're dedicating more of that spend online because that's where the consumers are. Just kind of setting the groundwork on why this is also important. But most of this stuff I'm suspecting you know. But in a recent study, when they said, where is your preferred advertising? If I have, let's say I'm a marketer and I have $10,000 a month to spend on advertising, how and where am I going to spend that dollars? Based on what the Gartner e-marketing study recently said, is like most organizations, retailers, CPG firms, most businesses don't just use one form of advertising. They do some level of integrated advertising, and they do the same thing with digital. So you can see the number one spend is digital advertising, content management, search, using Google, and which is the primary search engine, and paid ads through there, and then websites and emails. The idea is that you really need a mix, and display ad continues to be number one. Why is that important to consumers? At the end of the day, it's always about the consumers. And in a recent study, you guys probably read the What's in Store annual report from IDDBA. Terrific report if you haven't seen it. But when consumers were asked to compare online ads against traditional ads, they like online ads more. Why? I can get it. It's as convenient as me being online. It's much more engaging. I can get the information I need right away. It usually teaches me something new. It saves me time, more memorable, and it's relevant to me. One of the things I'm going to share with you in this overview is why we can actually target consumers based on their location, based on their profile, so that it is relevant to them. So just a couple of slides here to show you why it is so important to add internet and display advertising as part of your advertising portfolio. If you're going to reach consumers, you obviously need to be online. But you know that already. That's probably why you're here. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples. And these are some of my own examples. I pulled them off of my own computer. I was recently on a Hy-Vee site and looking around at what they were doing. And since I've been in marketing forever, I was looking at some of the local newspapers and some of the local sites to see if their display ads showed up. And lo and behold, they did. They showed up because they knew I was on the Hy-Vee site. They followed me. So here's an example of going on to the Des Moines Register. I went online there and look at the dynamic position of Hy-Vee. You can't miss it. These are examples of display advertising that basically followed me after I went to their website. You probably have seen it too, and you probably go, how did they know I was on that website? Here's another example of what Target is doing. I'm in the Minneapolis market. I shop Target. They know I shop Target up here, and they have Target on just about everything that I do in this market when I'm online. But they also know I have pets because I was looking at pets, and they were able to follow me. This is, again, pulled right off of my own computer, and it's an example of a display ad for Target in coordination with Purina and their new product line. What's really interesting with this, and again, I recommend when you go on to the website, start clicking them, start seeing how some of these display ads work and the messages. So when I clicked on this was, again, right off my own computer. When I clicked on this little guy right here, this popped up and said, this ad has been matched to your interest. It was selected for you based on your browsing activity. Target uses a third-party ad serving to determine that you might be interested in that. Remember that one chart that said that the consumers are interested in display ads and online ads because it's relevant to me. Here, they were able to do research and through the ad platforms and say, hey, this is relevant to her. I don't have a cat, but it's close enough. You also have seen how in your market, in your area, what's relevant to you, that CPG companies are also using display ads. Perfect example is what I just showed you with Purina. As you probably know, because we've all been in this industry a long time, that manufacturers have this thing called trade funds and marketing funds, and many of them have actually expanded or shifted their trade and marketing funds so that they are requiring that digital ad and online advertising is included. If you're still doing traditional ads in your circular and maybe a coupon book, you might not be, taking advantage of all the trade funds that are available. I'm up here in Minneapolis, so I talk to many CPG firms, members, and they will not provide full funding if you don't have all of the online advertising platforms and ways to reach consumers. So we know that brands have shifted too, not only in creating their own display funds, their own display ads, but shifting their funding to support this. They know this is where the consumers are. But I'll go back here a moment. You see how, in this case, Coca-Cola has a number of different ads. They're all coordinated. They're all consistent in look and feel and message, but they're all different sizes. That's what this next page shows you, is because on any given website, there are different sizes and shapes available for display ads. When we create a display ad image, like in the case of Coca-Cola here, we have to make sure it's extended to all of the different sizes that are important, whether the consumer is on an iPad or whether a smartphone or whether it's a computer. All of these have to be done at the same time, because when you're placing an ad on Des Moines Register or on some other site that's relevant to your customer, you don't know ahead of time what site, what place, what shape is available. So this is an example. These are the technical names of the different display ad formats that are required basically to be part of your display ad campaign. And here's an example of a recent Coburn's campaign. As you can see, while it's not the exact same look and feel on each one, they've certainly provided the skyscraper size and the leaderboard side and the rectangle side, all intended to attract the customer and be a coordinated look and feel. So I've talked a little bit about what is a display ad. You should see them all the time. Hopefully your senses are heightened a little bit more about it. Showed you why it's really important to the consumer and how marketers are shifting their ad spend and their time and attention to reach the consumers. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ad placement strategy. I shared a little bit about this already. Retargeting. So, write this down if you're near a pen and paper. Retargeting is just that. I went to the Hy-Vee website. Maybe I wanted to check out a recipe. Maybe I wanted to check out what was on their weekly circular or a new deal or their weekend deal. I went onto their site and then I left it. And then I went to ESPN, and then I went to my local, I'm looking for some shoes or wherever it is I'm looking for. Retargeting follows me or follows your customer around the internet. Retargeting is first they're at your website, and then once they're at your website, technical things like cookies are gathered and not the cookies you eat, and IP addresses are exchanged, and all of those technical issues that allow the display ad placement to follow the consumer and the customer. And obviously that's important from a marketing and advertising perspective, because as any good advertising plan does, you have to repeat and repeat and remind, keep hitting the customer with what it is you want to hit them with. And obviously the more times they see it, the higher recall and the higher sales. Targeting is the opposite. So for instance, if I all of a sudden went on ESPN and an ad comes up for something that I did not plan to look at or didn't look at before, but it is set up that this particular ad is by how it is set up prior to launch. It identifies the profile. I want people who are looking for sports. I want people who have a higher propensity of needing a new car, certain income level, certain geography. I'm able to program all that in and then put an ad where that client, that customer is most likely going to be. Retargeting, I visited my website. Now you're following me. Targeting, I didn't visit your website. I'm over here, but boy, I want to drive you to my website. I want to create awareness. So let me show you a couple examples. So retargeting, like I said, I'm the prospect, I'm the client, I visited your site. As soon as I leave your site, I'm being tracked. I leave your site, and the next site I go to, I see your ad, I see your BOGO deal, whatever it is you want to share with me, I see it after I went to your site. That's retargeting. Here's an example of retargeting. This was me setting up. I was on the Coburn site, and I was purposefully going to other sites, and it was following me around the internet. And again, all of this isn't just by accident. Prior to any campaign, prior to any display ad launch, we set up parameters, we identify what it is your goal is, where you want to go, who you want to track, what message you want, and those are all set up ahead of time. And we're able to then follow your customer around the internet as they visit other sites. This I was very surprised about. I went on to my LinkedIn site, and lo and behold, Hy-Vee followed me on LinkedIn after I found them. So retargeting doesn't just happen on other websites, it also happens on social media sites. So they know who I am, and they're basically following me around the internet. So if I was interested in using Hy-Vee as my pharmacy, they're certainly hitting me over and over again with that message. Retargeting is actually a very effective way to communicate. You're seeing a lot of organizations like Target, like Walmart, really putting a lot of effort in programs like retargeting baby products. You guys as retailers know the value of having the mother, soon-to-be mother, parents, post-childbirth, into your store. You know, the market basket is bigger. Target knows the market basket is bigger. They know that there's pharmacy needs. So they're really making a push with retargeting in baby products. Walmart's doing a great big push in retargeting with their online shopping, obviously to compete against Amazon, as well as their pet, which continues to be very big for them. So retargeting is very important digitally, but I will also say what happens at your store is really, really important. So as much as possible, link what is happening digitally with what's happening on your circular, with what's happening in store. That level of integrated marketing is absolutely where you're seeing retailers go. A little bit more work, you bet. Can you live without it? No way. So very common. Retargeting is a very successful way to target the groups you need. So here's targeting from a totally different site. So here, as an example of, somebody actually sent this to me. They were not on Coburn's. They had received this because they were actually in my house. I was having them look at different sites. So we fit the parameters. This could be however they set it up with the geographic area, but they were able to find us even though we weren't on the site. So this is targeting from other sites. But the goal here is, if I click on this Coburn's ad, even though I've never been to the Coburn website, boom, when you click on it, because it's dynamic, it takes you right to the Coburn site. But it can also take you right to the website, take you right to the circular page, it can take you right to the rewards page. It can take the consumer wherever you want to take them. This is what happened to me. I used the ESPN example. I was on ESPN yesterday. I was kind of curious to see what would show up for me, and this is what showed up for me. I'm not in the market for a new car, but obviously they thought I was, and this came up through ESPN. And you can see that Camry has two different sizes of display ads on the same page. So this is why it's really important when you're doing display ad design that we cover all of the different display formats. Another thing that's really important, I mentioned to you videos, pre-rolled videos. Now you see these every day. You might be annoyed by them. You might like them, sort of depending on what's important to you and how relevant the message is. A pre-rolled video is, let's say you click on, excuse me, CBS or CNN or ESPN, whatever site you might be on, and all of a sudden a video shows up. And you're trying to find a way to either shut it off, or you listen to it, or you pay attention to it, depending on what the message is. Again, it depends how relevant it is to you. A pre-roll video is an automatic video. Let's say it's promoting your new deli items. Let's say it's promoting your new meat and ready-to-eat, grab-and-go snacking items. You want to make sure that the video is short, 5, 7, 10 seconds long, and you want to make sure you get their attention right away. So a pre-rolled video is in the same spot as your display ad. It just is able to, as soon as the customer goes right onto the website, boom, it automatically goes off. This type of thing can actually happen on your own website as well. Videos are critically important, especially in food and recipe preparation, all those things that are right for the food industry. So having a series of videos that you can drop in display ads, having that as part of your arsenal, again, is very important. So again, that's sort of an overview of display ads, display placement strategies, why it is so important for customers and reaching customers, and what marketers are doing right now to build it as part of their advertising plan. So most retailers are stepping up in some place, in some way. Now, you might not be able to do everything all at once, but tipping your foot in the water, getting comfortable with it, maybe you're well down the line with this, but having, along with your dynamic website, display ads, Google AdWords so that your name shows up first, in Google, which is still almost 90% of search use, emails, mobile apps, all of these other ways to reach consumers. It is more complicated than it was 30 years ago, but that is the world we live in. So now, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you got it into your head, sort of what a display ad is. Please, I'll say it one last time. Next time you are on some site and a display ad shows up, click it. See how it works. See how it takes you. See what you like about it. See what you don't like about it. But building this into your own program is critical. So let's talk a little bit about metrics and then fees associated with it. Data and analytics. Now, one thing that's great about Google Analytics, if a consumer is clicking anything on the internet, you're pretty much able to capture the clicks, the direction, what they clicked, how long they were on it. You know, that is the good and the bad part of the internet, is that it's able to capture all sorts of data. So in any display ad campaign, you get visibility on consumer intention, consumer clicks, consumer paths, in a way that you would never get it in any traditional type of advertising. So along with any display ad campaign, whether it's a week, whether it's a month, whether it's 12 months, you get regular Google ad reporting. And this isn't something that we would expect you to do on your own. This is something that in working with AWG, we would provide weekly, bi-weekly, monthly campaigns, depending on what the length of your campaign is. We would be providing campaign reporting against anything that you do. This is just an example, and this is what you should expect. So display ads, how are display ads measured? How do I know if it's successful? You know, how do you know that your circular is successful other than coupon redemption? It's much easier online because, again, everything is measured, everything is tracked, everything is clicked. If there's one thing that we've learned as Americans, everything is tracked somehow. Display ads are measured by impressions. How often your ad is shown. So, you know, I showed you that Hy-Vee. So here I am as a consumer. I saw, when I opened up the Des Moines Register, I saw 2 Hy-Vee ads. That's 2 impressions. Every time your ad is shown. So again, think about, you know, the circulation of your newspaper and how much your ad might get out to how many consumers based on who gets the newspaper in your market. Multiply that exponentially on the number of consumers who could see your display ad. So it's an impression. How many times your ad is shown? It's counted every single time it's shown. It's also called a view. It's also called an ad view, but that's measured by impressions. So let's just say you did a 1-month campaign, a 1-week campaign, and we were shooting for 1 million impressions. You actually, and I'll show you how the math works. So let's say we got 1.119889 total impressions. That's how many times that ad popped up and was seen by some consumer in your market or however it was targeted. Of that 1.1 million, you had 1,550 clicks. Those clicks did what? They did whatever you wanted to do. They went to your website, they went to your ad, they clicked on a BOGO, they went to a contest. Whatever it is you needed them to do, they clicked on it. And that gave a click-through rate of 0.14%. Now, is that high? Is that low? I can tell you I've seen it much higher. When it is targeted to the right customer and it's a very good, a very relevant to them ad. You guys have seen that too. There might be something sent to you like that one Camry. I'm not in the business, I'm not interested in a car, so I'm not going to click on it. But I saw it. So if I see enough of it and I see it for a year, and in a year from now I'm interested in a car, and a Camry pops up because I remember it, that's the plus and the minuses of advertising. We never know the kind of long-lasting impression that it has on the client. But we know if you don't get in front of them, you don't have any impression at all. So there's impressions that have current and longer lasting value. There's clicks, that's immediately today they're clicking on it, and the click-through rate. So if all of a sudden I'm up here in the market and I shop at Lund's Byerly's, and Lund's Byerly's sends me a rotisserie chicken $1 off, boom, it's relevant to me. I love the rotisserie chicken. I buy it $1 off. I'm going to click it. I'm going to download it. And I'm going to go get it. So a lot has to do with how relevant it is, how much time you take in making sure it's the right ad to the right person. So average click-through rates, lower. It could be 0.05. It could be higher, 0.3. I've seen some as high as 2%. Again, it has to be BOGOs, has to be the right deal, the right people, depending on who it is. Now, you may say 2% or 1% isn't high enough, but look at the impressions. Look at the level of impressions that you can get on any given week, any given month, and you compare that against the same people at the same time seeing the same thing of your circular. So again, as you start building your display ad platform, people start seeing it more and more. They start getting used to it, and they start clicking more and more often for what it is they need and how they want to engage with you. So how is it paid for? So we know impressions are really how you measure display ads. Impressions are paid in CPMs. That M is the old-fashioned, I think, Roman numeral 1,000. So CPM is cost per 1,000. So that's how impressions or display ads are paid. That's how impressions are measured. So we actually sit down with you. So let's say we roll up our sleeves and we're working with AWG, and we roll up our sleeves and say, okay, we want to target 1 million impressions for your market over a 1 or 2 week period of time. The cost varies. The cost varies. Why? Because if you're going to be in a high traffic area, high volume area like ESPN, that's going to cost more, but it's also going to have higher visibility, higher impressions than, let's say, you're in the Moline Times, where it's a much more targeted group. That doesn't mean one is better than the other. It means you just have to make sure you have the right message to the right group at the right time. So that's why costs vary quite significantly. So I gave you 2 examples. Let's say we had a $10,000 per month budget, and the CPM target is $8 per CPM, meaning 8 per 1,000. That will give you, for $10,000 at $8 CPM, that will give you 1.25, 250,000 impressions. So it's a simple math. But at the same time, this could be the cost to be on a high volume, high market area. This could be a lower price. It could even be as low as $3, depending on what the market is, what the competition is for any given ad, any given space, any given site. So let's say at a $10,000 budget, this could be a $5,000 budget, this could be a $1,000 budget. Obviously, like anything else, you're going to get, the impressions that you pay for. But if the cost per thousands were $5, you now are seeing, impressions are now 2 million. So it is a calculation. We don't set it. AWG doesn't set it. The industry and the advertising exchange set it. It's supply and demand. If you're going to go on ESPN the week before the Super Bowl, you can bet that's going to be a lot more expensive than if you go into the social section of the Moline Times. They're just obviously different size markets, different locations. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we say, hey, we want to be at ESPN, or hey, we want to be on the social side of Moline Times. We identify the profile on who we want to see when we want to see it, and then we place these targets. We place the budget, we place what we would pay per CPM, and then sort of do the reverse math. This is how it works in placing display ads throughout the internet on various websites throughout the internet. So you guys have a challenge like any other business. Retailers are not unique. You might all of a sudden say, hey, let's double and triple the size of our advertising fund. Probably won't. Or you will probably say, let's start shifting our dollars, just like I shared with you earlier about how marketers around the businesses, all business sectors, are sort of shifting their dollars. So this is something that, we really recommend in working with AWG. You can use a calculator like this. But you start with, this is just examples. So you can plug in your own. You've got weekly sales of $150,000, so your annual sales are $7.8 million. Do you spend 1% of your advertising on, 1% of your sales on advertising, or something higher? What does that look like? Right now, are you putting 100% of your dollars into your newspaper circular, or are you sort of splitting it between newspaper circular and websites? Okay, so if you're not going to put any more dollars into your advertising budgets, maybe you might work exactly with the budget that you have. How does it start looking different? How do you reduce the amount of spend that you have on your circular? You maybe keep websites static, and then you start dedicating some dollars to display advertising. Like anything else, if this is a new area for you, we recommend that you go slow. You don't need to tomorrow spend $10,000 per week on a display ad platform. Your big competitors are there, and they're spending, hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s per week, if not millions of dollars per week on display advertising. So that's what you're competing against. But in working with your own ad spend calculator and talking to AWG, these are the types of things that we can work with you on pilots, on experiments in some markets, on maybe you're launching a new item, maybe you're remodeled a new store, maybe you're building a new store. There's all sorts of messages that you can be sharing with consumers in your market. Your current clients, your new customers that are maybe shopping elsewhere, but these are ways that you can reach them. So now all of a sudden you've shifted here in this 50% column, you've shifted more dollars away from circular, but you're putting more dollars into digital advertising and the different ways to reach them. So think about that internally. You can, Caleb's going to have this website or this webinar, so he can certainly send you this ad calculator that you can use yourself. And reach back to AWG and start saying, what do you want to practice? What do you want to start with? You'll know most medium-sized retailers are already online. Doing display ad, doing integrated digital advertising like this, it's just a matter of time before you will as well. So that's it. Start understanding where you're going with your own digital plan. My guess is you've already thought about it, which is why you're on this webinar. But in working with AWG, we can put together some ways in which you can start slowly or ramp up quickly, whichever works for you on how you can start connecting this way. So now you know what display ads are, you know why it's important, you know how consumers use it, you know how manufacturers and other retailers use it, again, please try it yourself. You know how it's available for you, you know how it's funded, you know how you can build it into your advertising plan. Now I'm going to show you a case study. This was something that we as Brick have worked with customers, retail customers, with already. So these numbers are real. The case study is real. And here we go. So we're working with this large regional player. Most of you guys would know him. And they knew that they have to start having a bigger presence online. They knew that they were never going to grow their website traffic, their success online, until they really dedicated time, money, effort towards it. So their campaign goals was to increase website traffic. Why in the world would you have a website if you're not driving people there and they're using it as a tool for shopping? Increase department sales. department sales, product sales, depending on what they were driving. And increase reward card members. You all know the value of a loyal customer. You all know the value of if you have a reward card or a fuel card like you saw Hy-Vee, you know the value to your bottom line if you have loyal customers. So with this particular retailer, we created this thing with them called Free Friday. Every single week, they were going to be offering one new item, obviously working with their manufacturers or their private label, and offering a free item, but it came with some strings attached. So the theme was Free Friday. It was a 52-week promotion because they said we were going to go in full feet, full bore. We were going to do it, and we were going to do it right. We were going to target our current customers. We were going to promote one item each week. It could have been 3 months or 3 weeks of dairy, that whole, driving department sales, or 3 weeks of center store, whatever it may be. They were going to be online coupons only. They could only download the coupons on Friday. But they allowed a 2-week redemption period. So if it's tomorrow, if it's this coming Friday, I download it, I have it in my mobile app, or I print it off. I have 2 weeks to redeem it, but I can only get it on Friday. So think about that sort of every week excitement for a free item. Consumers love free. Everybody loves free. And they were saying, basically, we were going to change the way we do business by driving this every single week for consistency. So that was the promotion. But they did a really good job with it. They identified and drove every week a display ad in all of the relevant sites. So not only did they have one on their own site, they did it throughout the internet on various websites that they knew their customers visited, and that would be through retargeting. They dropped an email to the consumers on Thursday and Friday, and they really wanted to create that excitement for Fridays. They did Google AdWords. See, when you clicked on it, it came up loud and clear, #1 on the Google search, and they did in-store signage. And they also did it in the circular. So totally perfectly launched, perfectly managed, integrated campaign. They were in this for good. So if you go onto the website, you will see that they use the same look, the same feel. When a consumer clicks on something like this to download it, they are taken right to this easy to follow online program where it explains what explains what it is, and automatically sets them up. So it makes it as easy as possible for the consumer. Here are the results. Remember, everything Google AdWords or Google Analytics allows everything to be viewed. Each of these peaks is Friday. Every single time the consumer is looking. So this is what happened throughout the 52-week period. Before the 52-week every Friday campaign, they had 7,365 weekly visits per week. Obviously, weekly visits is per week. So that was less than 400,000 visits per year. After this campaign, they were able to increase web traffic alone by over 1,400%. They were now getting 116,000 weekly visits, and 45% of those weekly visits are new customers. Brilliantly produced, brilliantly managed, and they're getting this kind of new customer. Again, with digital and display advertising, you get this kind of information. We can also see that they were viewing almost 3 pages per session. We can identify exactly which of those ones were viewed. The retailer gave us feedback as well that we didn't have visibility on. And this was what the retailer said. An additional 2.2 million digital coupons, 2.2 million, were downloaded to their rewards card. 205,000 new reward card member signups. That was worth it just there. And they did not expect it, but overall, they attributed to the campaigns, but they increased revenue over $6 million because that consistently, getting traffic online, bringing the customer into the store to redeem. They just gave all of that credit to the 52-week campaign. It was so successful. They said, hey, we don't need to do it every Friday. Let's do prior to the holidays. Let's do the 29 days prior to Christmas. Why not? I'm sure it started right after Thanksgiving. And then they said, why just do one item per week? So every fourth week, they added more items. And of course, the value here is these are all funded by the manufacturers. So everything that they set out to do, they achieved their goals and so much more. We could quantify their success, but they did it with a vengeance. They said, we're going to do it, we're going to do it right, and we're going to keep doing it, and we are going to get manufacturers involved. Remember how I said earlier, manufacturers have money to spend, but they want to make sure that the retailers and wholesalers are spending it this way. This is a perfect example of how it can be driven for retailers in different markets, through their wholesalers, with their private label. This is what success looks like. So it's been 50 minutes. I've done all the talking, and it's now time to turn it over to Caleb and see if you have any questions.
If no one has any questions right now, we will be sending out a short survey within the next few days, and we'd love to have your feedback. And you can, of course, submit any questions you have during that time, anytime afterward. Give me a call. I can forward you to Christine if you'd like to talk to her or anything. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we hope to see you when we do another one of these.